Continuing from the previous chapter, Lin Dong and Little Mink ventured into Beast Valley to acquire the bones of a celestial demon tiger, all in a bid to boost Little Yan's strength. After leaving Beast Valley, Lin Dong didn't exit the deep mountains. Instead, he flew towards the remote depths of the mountain range. Here, in these secluded areas, Little Yin would need to fuse with the celestial demon tiger bones to reach the Nirvana Stage. The process would undoubtedly cause quite a commotion, making this isolated location the most suitable. Lin Dong flew through the mountainous depths for several hours before finally choosing a spot. He descended upon a massive and treacherous peak. The mountain stood thousands of feet tall, like a giant pillar piercing the sky. Its summit was shrouded in clouds and mist, obscuring the view of what lay above. This is the place. Lin Dong landed atop the peak, surveying his surroundings with satisfaction before giving a nod of approval. With a flick of his sleeve, Little Yin sprang out. Little Mink also appeared with a casual flicker, casting a glance at Little Yin. Foolish tiger, Lord Mink knows you've gained some intelligence. Let's be clear. Even though you have a mutated constitution, your bloodline is far too mediocre. You're not even on par with the earth-splitting tiger. Thus, fusing with the celestial demon tiger bones poses significant danger for you. Lin Dong's expression changed slightly at these words, as though he wanted to say something but held back. Little Yin, after all, was just an ordinary flame python tiger. If not for its rare mutated constitution, it would never have reached its current level. Your bloodline is too ordinary. Even with a rare mutated constitution, it greatly limits you. If you truly wish to become stronger, you must take this risk. Otherwise, Lin Dong might be better off sending you back to the Great Yin Dynasty. The world outside is dangerous. Without strength, you'll only be a burden to Lin Dong, Little Mink said indifferently. Little Yan's tiger eyes glistened, clearly understanding Little Mink's words. Its gaze lingered on Lin Dong, and it let out a low growl. Though Lin Dong couldn't comprehend the meaning behind Little Yan's growl, he could sense its decision. He took a deep breath, turned to Little Mink, and said softly, "Let's proceed." "Thank you. This foolish tiger does have some spirit. If you can overcome this, it will be a transformative experience for you," Little Mink chuckled. His expression gradually grew serious as he nodded slowly. With a wave of Lin Dong's sleeve, the jet-black, iron-like celestial demon tiger bones crashed heavily onto the ground, emanating a faint, oppressive aura. To fuse the celestial demon tiger bones, the first step is to extract the original bones. Simply put, you must remove the original tiger bones. This step is highly dangerous. Any mistake could result in shattered bones and death, Little Mink said solemnly, eyeing the intimidating celestial demon tiger bones. Lin Dong, 200,000 Nirvana pills. Hearing Little Mink's command, Lin Dong unhesitatingly tossed out the cosmic bag. Instantly, countless round, fiery red Nirvana pills surged forth, forming a massive torrent that appeared at the mountain peak. The Nirvana energy spread out, making the entire mountain feel suddenly scorching hot. Nirvana flame, converge! Little Mink's paws moved in a complex pattern, releasing streams of purple-black light into the torrent of Nirvana pills. As the light merged with the torrent, it suddenly twisted. In the next instant, crimson flames erupted, burning so intensely that even the air seemed to distort. Little Yin, if you can't withstand even this step, there's no point in continuing further, Little Mink said, his gaze incredibly focused. With a flick of his claw, the Nirvana flame surged down, engulfing Little Yin entirely. The moment the Nirvana flame wrapped around Little Yin, Lin Dong could almost see the scales on its body melting away instantly. A terrifying roar echoed through the blazing Nirvana flame, reverberating across the entire mountain range. Lin Dong watched the intense Nirvana flame unblinkingly. Within, Little Yin struggled fiercely. Through the flames, Lin Dong could faintly see Little Yan's body twisting, its flesh seemingly melting into a slurry. The agonized roar continued for over 10 minutes before gradually fading. However, this didn't mean the pain had ended. Little Yan's mouth had been burned away, leaving it incapable of roaring any longer. Within the raging Nirvana flame, Little Yan's body was now a bloody, mangled mess. If Lin Dong couldn't still sense a faint sign of life, he might have thought Little Yan had perished entirely. Extract the tiger bones! A fierce glint flashed in Little Mink's eyes as his paw reached out. Purple-black light condensed into a large hand, thrusting into the Nirvana flame and piercing into the mass of flesh, then forcefully pulling back. A set of ghastly white, slightly twisted tiger bones were forcibly extracted from the bloodied flesh by Little Mink. Watching this scene, Lin Dong couldn't help but shudder. His hands clenched tightly as he sensed the excruciating pain Little Yan was enduring. To burn the body and extract the bones, just the thought of such a process would make most people shiver. Yet here it was happening in reality to Little Yan. Lin Dong, the celestial demon tiger bones. Little Mink's voice, filled with a frightening seriousness, boomed in Lin Dong's ears. Gritting his teeth, Lin Dong struck the celestial demon tiger bones with a palm, and with a sound like clashing metal, he sent them hurtling into the Nirvana flame. As soon as the celestial demon tiger bones entered the Nirvana flame, the bloodied flesh, as if sensing something, began writhing wildly, slowly wrapping itself around the bones. Bang! 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 However, as the flesh entwined with the tiger bones, a dark glow emanated from the bones, attempting to repel the flesh entirely. Though the flesh was repelled momentarily, it clung on like sticky taffy, persistently wrapping around the bones again and again. There are remnants of the celestial demon tiger's essence in these bones. They will resist Little Yan's attempt to fuse with them. Unfortunately, we can't help with this part. It's up to Little Yan to conquer it, Little Mink said, wiping the sweat from his brow, his eyes fixed on the Nirvana flame. Moreover, Little Yan's demon spirit is fused with its flesh, but in this state, it can only hold out for an hour at most. If it fails to successfully fuse with the celestial demon tiger bones within that time, it will die due to the destruction of its body. Lin Dong nodded silently, then sat down cross-legged, his gaze locked unwaveringly on the flames. Unnoticed, his heartbeat had accelerated considerably. The battle between flesh and tiger bones within the flames continued for nearly half an hour. As time passed, Lin Dong's eyes became bloodshot, a rare sight causing Little Mink to shake his head helplessly. Having known Lin Dong for so long, he had seldom seen him so agitated. Another 10 minutes passed, and as the hour mark approached, Lin Dong finally couldn't hold back. He leapt to his feet and began pacing anxiously. Suddenly, he stopped in his tracks, raised his head abruptly, and quickly stepped forward, reaching his hand toward the Nirvana flame. He knew that if this dragged on any longer, Little Yan might truly die on the spot. However, just as Lin Dong's hand was about to touch the Nirvana flame, it suddenly surged outward, its force pushing him back several steps. Don't act recklessly, Lin Dong. Little Mink appeared in front of Lin Dong, his eyes fixed on the Nirvana flame. Inside, the previous struggle seemed to have ceased. Vaguely, a massive figure stood quietly within the flames, and an aura of savage dominance, several times stronger than the celestial demon tiger bones, suddenly spread out, as if a primordial beast were awakening. Has it succeeded? Lin Dong's pupils contracted as he sensed the intense aura of savage dominance. Under the watchful eyes of Lin Dong and Little Mink, the massive figure within the Nirvana flame suddenly lifted its head, and a deafening tiger roar echoed through the air. Under the pressure of this tiger roar, filled with ferocity and dominance, countless demonic beasts within the mountain range trembled in fear. The might of the celestial demon tiger. Little Mink's eyes sparkled with a bright light as he muttered to himself. The tiger's roar resounded powerfully across the heavens and earth. Immediately, the blazing Nirvana flame seemed to be drawn towards the colossal figure, pouring into it madly. At the same time, the torrents of suspended Nirvana pills in the sky turned into streams of flame-like Nirvana energy, continuously descending and being devoured by the enormous figure below. This foolish tiger is about to break through to the Nirvana stage. Watching this, little Mink finally smiled, a hint of relief in his voice. Lin Dong also sat back down heavily on the ground beside him. The heavy stone weighing on his heart finally lifted. Scarlet flames, like giant crimson dragons, roared out from the torrents of Nirvana pills, continuously being absorbed into the massive figure at the mountaintop below. The mountain peak trembled like an earthquake, affected by the powerful waves of energy emanating from the colossal figure. A series of awe-inspiring auras continuously radiated from its massive form. Under the fierce surge of Nirvana energy, even Lin Dong took several steps back, his face serious as he watched the scene unfold. Although Little Yan's absorption speed of Nirvana energy couldn't compare to his own, empowered by the devouring ancestral symbol, it far surpassed that of many Nirvana Stage experts. Moreover, under Little Yan's incredible absorption rate, the torrent of 200,000 Nirvana pills was visibly thinning at a speed noticeable to the naked eye. This guy is quite the glutton. Seeing the Nirvana pill torrent dissipate as its energy was completely absorbed, Lin Dong couldn't help but take a sharp breath. As it breaks through to the Nirvana stage, the Nirvana energy will temper its body, allowing its flesh to fuse better with the celestial demon tiger bones. After this, it will leap through the dragon gate, evolving from an ordinary flame python tiger into a celestial demon tiger. Little Mink said with a satisfied smile as he watched the scene. Of course, that's not entirely accurate. It's more like a celestial demon tiger with a mutated constitution. Hey, SK, I'm quite curious about how strong this foolish tiger can become in the future. Lin Dong smiled slightly, finally unclenching his tightly held fists. Watching his longtime companion undergo a rebirth by fire filled his heart with joy. Breaking through to the Nirvana stage was clearly not something that could be achieved in a short time. Even with its rebirth, it took Little Yin a full day to completely absorb the Nirvana energy condensed from 200,000 Nirvana pills. Moreover, even after absorbing these 200,000 Nirvana pills, it was clear Little Yan's breakthrough was not yet complete. Seeing this, Lin Dong immediately took out another 300,000 Nirvana pills. This grand gesture made Little Mink click his tongue in amazement. Lin Dong had about 1.5 million Nirvana pills, all earned through life and death struggles, and now, just for Little Yan's breakthrough, he had used almost a third. Such a privilege was something even many experts from high-ranking dynasties couldn't enjoy. Haha, as long as it can absorb them, I don't mind giving it all the Nirvana pills I have left, Lin Dong laughed, responding to Little Mink's exclamations. Little Yin had endured the agony of having its body burned and bones extracted to become stronger and stay by his side. Sacrificing some Nirvana pills was nothing in comparison. Let's see what this guy will transform into next, Little Mink said lazily, then looked up, his eyes reflecting the blazing red flames. After Lin Dong invested another 300,000 Nirvana pills, Little Yin now had more than enough Nirvana energy. It took 3 whole days and nights to absorb such a massive amount. For 3 days, Little Yan's body was almost entirely enveloped in the intense Nirvana flame. Though its body remained motionless within the fire, a terrifying aura, tempered in the flames, quietly spread outward. When the dawn of the 4th day broke over the mountain range, the once massive torrent of Nirvana pills on the mountain peak had again thinned dramatically. The Nirvana flame enveloping the massive body had also faded significantly. It was evident that the 300,000 Nirvana pills were on the verge of being fully absorbed by Little Yin. Seated quietly on a rock on the mountain peak, Lin Dong watched the figure within the flames without blinking. Over the past 4 days, he hadn't closed his eyes even once. Despite this, he showed no signs of fatigue. Instead, his eyes were filled with deep anticipation and curiosity. The Nirvana flame blazed, and suddenly, the massive figure within it seemed to tremble violently. It then raised its head sharply, opening its enormous mouth, swallowing the remnants of the Nirvana pills and the Nirvana flame in the sky. When the last trace of the Nirvana flame was swallowed into its body, the massive figure finally appeared clearly before Lin Dong and Little Mink. It was a giant tiger, black as ink from head to toe. The sunlight reflected off its body, giving it a metallic sheen. Huge black wings folded on its back, with feathers that seemed to move, occasionally glinting with a cold, blade-like gleam. Under that sharp glare, even a Nirvana Stage expert's body would feel a chill. Moreover, its tiger eyes were also pitch black, exuding an aura of endless ferocity. It was as if a peerless savage tiger from the primordial world had emerged. The black giant tiger let out a long roar towards the sky, and a sonic wave, almost tangible, suddenly swept outward. Cracks began to split open across the massive mountain peak. At the same time, an aura of savage and overwhelming might burst from within it, reaching the level of a Nirvana Stage powerhouse. It was clear that this time, Little Yin had successfully advanced to the Nirvana Stage. Success! An intense joy flashed in Lin Dong's eyes as he realized that Little Yin had finally reached the Nirvana Stage. Just as the ecstatic Lin Dong was about to stand up, the black giant tiger that Little Yin had transformed it didn't immediately pounce over. Instead, it roared at Lin Dong, then sat cross-legged like a human. At that moment, Lin Dong felt a wave emanate from Little Yan's body, so intense that it made his scalp tingle. As this wave spread, Little Yan's body, previously black as iron, began to turn a strange crimson. Wisps of white smoke continuously emitted from its body. The ground of the mountain peak also dried up at an astonishing rate, and cracks spread everywhere, while the forest on the summit instantly withered away. What's happening? Lin Dong's expression changed dramatically as he watched Little Yin, his voice urgent. This guy, Little Mink, was equally taken aback, then looked solemnly at Little Yin, who had sat down cross-legged, muttering, "It's actually triggering the Nirvana tribulation. It wants to pass through the Nirvana tribulation." What? Lin Dong's body trembled violently, clearly shocked as well, and he shouted, "What's it doing? How dare it face the Nirvana tribulation so recklessly?" The Nirvana tribulation was something that Nirvana Stage experts feared most. More than half of those at the Nirvana Stage didn't fall in battles against others, but rather during the Nirvana tribulation. Each Nirvana tribulation was terrifying. Even a slight mistake could result in one's cultivation being completely wasted, everything reduced to nothing. So when Lin Dong heard that Little Yin dared to challenge the Nirvana tribulation right after breaking through to the Nirvana Stage, his face turned ashen. No need to panic too much. This foolish tiger has fused with the celestial demon tiger bones. Perhaps there is residual power in the bones, forcing it to trigger the Nirvana tribulation. But this might be a good thing. If the Nirvana tribulation arises from within, and it can pass through it, it will perfectly merge with the celestial demon tiger bones, with no further rejection. Little Mink's eyes flickered with a contemplative look as he spoke. This guy's intelligence should have surged when it advanced to the Nirvana Stage. If it wasn't confident, it wouldn't dare act so rashly. Anyway, there's no point in worrying now. We can only wait. Little Mink sighed helplessly at the end, clearly not expecting things to develop this way. Lin Dong furrowed his brow, but in the end, he could only nod weakly. He raised his head, his gaze fixed on Little Yin, whose body had turned crimson. His heart, which had just settled down, was now racing again. Over the next half-day, the terrifying, scorching wave emitted from Little Yan's body grew stronger. Eventually, even Lin Dong and Little Mink could no longer endure it and had to retreat beyond 100 meters from the mountain peak. Standing outside the mountain's perimeter, they realized that the summit, from the mountainside up, had withered completely, creating a stark and spectacular sight. So this is the Nirvana tribulation? Truly terrifying. No wonder all Nirvana Stage experts regard it as a monstrous flood and beast, Lin Dong murmured, watching the scene unfold. Even though he had yet to experience it himself, the thought of such a terrifying wave erupting within one's body, and the destruction it would cause, was enough to instill fear. The dreadful wave emanating from the mountain peak persisted for most of the day. As night gradually fell, Lin Dong suddenly noticed that the terrifying wave was rapidly dissipating. Is the Nirvana tribulation over? Seeing this, Lin Dong's spirit lifted. He quickly looked toward the mountain peak, where the intense heat had caused a significant amount of mist to form, making the scene rather hazy. As Lin Dong focused his gaze on the peak, a series of heavy, awkward footsteps came from within the thick white mist. Soon after, he saw a figure slowly emerge from the mist. Dense white mist spread across the mountaintop, but Lin Dong's gaze was fixed on the figure walking out of the mist with heavy, awkward steps. The figure was exceptionally burly, with dark skin that made it look like an iron tower. Just standing there, it exuded a suffocating pressure. The figure was completely naked. Its face appeared somewhat blank, and upon closer inspection, one could see that this face bore a slight resemblance to Lin Dong's. The atmosphere atop the mountain seemed to freeze at this moment. Lin Dong stared blankly at the burly figure standing at the edge of the cliff. After a long while, he managed to open his dry lips and speak. "Little Yin?" The figure, like a black iron tower, brightened its previously dull black eyes upon hearing this name. Its gaze was fixed unblinkingly on Lin Dong, and it scratched its head. It seemed to want to say something, but only a breathy sound came out. However, the sudden surge of emotion in its eyes was clearly seen by Lin Dong. "TK, it has indeed shed its beast form," Little Mink said with a surprised smile, looking at Little Yin, who had completely transformed. Lin Dong's eyes were filled with curiosity as he looked at Little Yin. Then he asked, "Can Little Yin speak now?" Although it now possesses intelligence on par with humans, it still needs to adapt before it can speak. Little Mink rolled his eyes. With a face full of joy, Lin Dong floated forward. Standing before Little Yin, he only reached its waist. The powerful pressure continuously radiating from Little Yin made it slightly difficult for him to breathe. Little Yin stared at Lin Dong, a silly smile on its face, then knelt down. A deep, awkward voice slowly came from its mouth. "Master my foot." Lin Dong laughed and scolded, lightly patting Little Yin's head, which was as hard as metal. "From now on, your name is Lin Yin. I raised you myself, so call me Big Brother." Little Yin scratched his head, his newly acquired intelligence allowing him to clearly sense the genuine joy in Lin Dong's words and eyes. A somewhat awkward smile appeared on his previously dull face, and he nodded heavily. "Big Brother." Lin Dong's face was full of smiles. He then pointed a Little Mink on his shoulder and said, "This is your second brother." Little Mink, who had been watching the scene with his paws crossed over his chest, was caught off guard by Lin Dong's sudden statement. His fur stood on end, and he exclaimed sharply, "Nonsense! Who's the second brother of this foolish tiger? And damn it, you little brat dare call yourself the Big Brother? Think you can rank above Lord Mink? Are you tired of living? Though you keep calling yourself Lord Mink, I know that among the heavenly demon Mink clan, your age is probably similar to mine," Lin Dong said lazily. After years of being together, he understood Little Mink very well. This guy liked to act mature and experienced, but sometimes his behavior betrayed his true age. Lin Dong didn't deny that Little Mink had lived quite a while, but considering the longevity of the heavenly demon Mink species, Little Mink was likely only in his youth by their standards. Second brother. Despite Little Mink's fierce protests, Little Yin paid no attention. In his heart, Lin Dong, who had guided him from a young cub to his current state, was someone he absolutely obeyed and felt close to. So, there was no resistance to Lin Dong's words. As Little Mink was loudly protesting Lin Dong's arrangement, he suddenly quieted down when Little Yin addressed him as second brother. His normally sly eyes seemed to flash with something different. "Two idiots," Little Mink muttered, curling his lips, but surprisingly, he didn't say anything more. Lin Dong chuckled. In many ways, the bond between the three of them ran deep. To Little Yin, Lin Dong was both a master and a father figure. To Lin Dong, Little Mink was both a teacher and a friend. The three had relied on each other since their days in Qingyang Town, overcoming countless hardships to finally make their mark in the great Yin dynasty. Lin Dong believed this was not their end. Someday, their legend would be told across these lands. Little Yin, put on some clothes first, Lin Dong said, pulling out a large black robe from his cosmic bag and tossing it to Little Yin. Though clumsily, Little Yin caught it and put it on. Dressed in his robe, Little Yin stood like a towering figure beside Lin Dong, his massive body exuding an intimidating presence. Even compared to the blood spirit puppet, he appeared slightly more imposing. Of course, with Little Yan's current strength, even the blood spirit puppet would have a hard time matching him. Having successfully passed a Nirvana tribulation, Little Yin had truly stepped into the first Nirvana stage. This advancement was even faster than Lin Dong's. Although the celestial demon tiger bones played a part, it was still something to be envied. So, kid, where are you planning to go next? Little Mink asked lazily. While he didn't oppose Little Yin calling him second brother, expecting this proud creature to ever call Lin Dong big brother was beyond impossible. Of course, to open the ancient secret repository. Lin Dong smirked. In about 10 days, the best time to open the ancient secret repository would arrive. How could he miss such an event? The people from the demonic rock dynasty should have arrived there by now. Little Mink chuckled playfully. Demonic rock dynasty? Do we still need to fear them now? Lin Dong smiled. With Little Yin, who had just survived a Nirvana tribulation, he now had two companions on par with first Nirvana stage experts. Such a lineup would be formidable even among the high-ranking dynasties. Although they might not be able to eliminate the demonic rock dynasty entirely, if the latter dared to make trouble again, Lin Dong would make sure they understood what it meant to hit a real iron wall. Not only did he no longer fear the demonic rock dynasty, but he was also looking forward to another encounter. He imagined that Shi Xian's expression would be quite entertaining when that time came. Although Little Yin has passed a Nirvana tribulation, he's likely still unfamiliar with his body and needs time to adjust before facing other strong opponents. But since this foolish tiger called me second brother, Lord Mink won't shortchange you, Little Mink said as he grabbed something with his paw. A black scroll appeared in his hand, which he flicked over to Little Yin. This is the Celestial Demon Tiger Clan's ultimate martial art, the Celestial Demon Transformation. It's not like the trash I gave the Earth-Splitting Tiger last time. If you can master this, you'll carve out a place for yourself even in the demon region. Little Yin caught the scroll in his hand. It glowed with an eerie black light, and a low tiger roar could be heard faintly from within, clearly indicating it wasn't an ordinary item. Though Little Yin was intrigued by it, he didn't immediately accept it and instead habitually looked at Lin Dong. Your second brother is being generous for once, so go ahead and take it. He's never given me anything like this, Lin Dong said with a smile. The things I have are mostly for demon beasts, which are useless to you. Besides, relying on others won't make you a true powerhouse. Little Mink stretched lazily, a mischievous glint in his eyes. But if you're willing to swap places with me, I might give you some benefits. Lin Dong smiled wryly. This guy was quite obsessed with titles. It seemed his guess was right that Little Mink wasn't considered an elder in the Heavenly Demon Mink clan. Little Yin still needs a suitable weapon. Let's see if we can find a heaven-tier spiritual treasure when we head to the ancient secret repository this time, Lin Dong said, ignoring Little Mink as he turned to Little Yin. Weapons? I have one. Hearing Lin Dong's words, Little Yin grinned and then clenched his large hand. Black light quickly gathered in his hand, eventually forming a completely black rod, thicker than Lin Dong's thigh. The rod's material was unknown, but upon closer inspection, its shaft seemed to be covered with black scales. One end of the rod was sharp like a spear, resembling the open mouth of a snake with fangs gleaming with a cold, sinister light. It seemed to be a unique snake staff. This must be a life-bound spiritual treasure that Little Yin crafted using his old snake tail segment, Little Mink remarked in surprise. I never expected he would be capable of such a feat after just surviving a single Nirvana tribulation. Typically, only those demon beasts who have endured 3 or more Nirvana tribulations can refine a part of their body into a life-bound spiritual treasure. These life-bound spiritual treasures grow stronger as their owner's power increases, becoming progressively more formidable. Lin Dong was equally astonished. From the pitch-black snake staff, he could feel an extraordinarily heavy energy, comparable to the aura of his heavy prison peak or his sky crocodile bone spear. Moreover, the materials used to forge the snake staff were part of Little Yan's body, making it exceptionally wieldy and immensely powerful. It looks like we've saved on getting a weapon. Alright then, it's time to move. I want to see what the demonic rock dynasty can do to me now. Lin Dong waved his hand with a smile, then turned and leaped toward the edge of the mountain range. Behind him, Little Yin followed closely, sticking to him like a shadow. Since there were still about 10 days until the opening of the ancient secret repository, Lin Dong and his companions didn't rush too much on their journey back. They also needed to allow Little Yin time to adjust to his new body, so their pace slowed considerably, taking about 3 to 4 days to reach the ancient domain hall, now the most bustling place in the ancient region. Though it was called a hall, it was actually an expansive, enormous city. It was said that this was once the site of a super sect's founding in ancient times, with a scale so vast it left people in awe. This was the location where the ancient secret repository would be opened. Almost all the dynasties of the northwest region, believing themselves to be somewhat capable, had rushed here during this period. The sheer number of people was beyond ordinary description. When Lin Dong and his party landed on a mountain peak outside the ancient domain hall and saw the dark mass of people flying back and forth in the sky, even their calm composure could not prevent them from gasping. It seemed that the ancient domain hall had drawn in 70 to 80% of the people from the northwest region. The allure of the ancient secret repository is truly terrifying. So many dynasties. Lin Dong was quite shocked as he watched this scene. The city itself was already extraordinarily grand, far surpassing Yang City, yet it still seemed somewhat overcrowded. Even in the surrounding mountains and forests, there were many presences. Clearly, the influx of people was overwhelming this place. Little Yan's hulking body stood behind Lin Dong like a black iron tower. His deep black eyes scanned the figures moving around them. Beneath his seemingly honest gaze was an almost instinctual wariness and ferocity. Although he had shed his beast form, the innate traits he was born with clearly weren't going to fade away. "Let's go, Little Yin." "Into the city," Lin Dong said with a smile, leaping down from the mountain peak and heading towards the massive ancient domain hall. Little Yin nodded and followed closely behind. Over the past few days, he had begun practicing the celestial demon transformation that Little Mink had given him. He had also gradually gained precise control over his new body. His steps were incredibly accurate, each one covering the exact same distance, always staying within 10 meters of Lin Dong. Within this range, no matter what sudden changes occurred, he could react perfectly. Even experts who had survived a Nirvana tribulation wouldn't be able to harm Lin Dong under his watch. The ancient domain hall was vast, with no fewer than 8 city gates. Yet the flow of people remained incredibly large. Seeing the long queues, Lin Dong did not want to do anything that would arouse public resentment, so he quietly joined one of the lines with Little Yin. In a few days, the ancient secret repository will open. It's said that this repository is extraordinary, left behind by a super sect from ancient times. Anyone who can gain even a little inheritance from it will definitely stand out from the ancient battlefield. It's not that easy. Just look at how many people are drawn here by the repository. You can't even count the high-ranking dynasties. Without some real skills, dreaming of obtaining treasures is just foolish. And don't think the forces interested in the ancient secret repository are limited to those in the open. Who knows who's hiding in the shadows? Not to mention us. Even the powerful dynasties like the Demonic Rock Dynasty or the Primordial Wilderness Dynasty that obtained the ancient keys may not leave with everything they came for. As Lin Dong quietly waited in line, he also listened to the hushed conversations around him, his eyebrows slightly raising. It seemed this trip to the ancient secret repository would be quite tricky. The Demonic Rock Dynasty, the Primordial Wilderness Dynasty, and the Nether Spring Dynasty, the 3 forces holding the ancient keys, have already arrived at the ancient domain hall. But it's said that Lin Dong, who obtained the last ancient key, hasn't shown up yet. Maybe that kid doesn't dare to show up. Did you see the notice on the city wall? The Demonic Rock Dynasty has now raised the bounty to 1,000,000 Nirvana pills. And with the ancient key on him, the moment he shows up, he'll probably meet a miserable end. This guy is unlucky. Having a treasure invites trouble. Without a high-ranking dynasty backing him, he dared to snatch an ancient key. Isn't that courting death? Lin Dong, who had been leisurely listening to the various pieces of information, was momentarily stunned when he heard this, not expecting the conversation to suddenly turn to him. He squinted and looked toward the city wall, and sure enough, there was a conspicuous wanted poster pasted there, featuring a portrait of him. 1,000,000 Nirvana pills. It seems the demonic rock dynasty is really eager to get rid of me. Lin Dong muttered to himself, a faint smile curling his lips as he looked at the bounty on the poster. As Lin Dong murmured to himself, the atmosphere around him seemed to change suddenly. The whispering voices ceased abruptly, and Lin Dong felt numerous gazes focusing on him. These gazes, initially filled with shock, gradually turned into ecstatic delight. "It seems I've been recognized," Lin Dong muttered as he touched his face and looked at the circle of space that had suddenly cleared around him. "That's him! That's Lin Dong!" Amidst the excited gazes, a shocked voice finally shouted out. Immediately, countless eyes outside the city gate turned scorching hot in an instant. "Capture this kid, and we can get 1,000,000 Nirvana pills and the ancient key," some people growled, their voices thick with greed. Lin Dong frowned slightly as he watched the scene unfold. The demonic rock dynasty had truly gone to great lengths to cause trouble for him. "Make way!" A group of people finally stepped out from the bustling crowd, their eyes unfriendly as they locked on Lin Dong. "It's the people from the Great Desert Dynasty. That's another high-ranking dynasty. The guy leading them is said to have stepped into the Nirvana Stage, and his strength is not to be underestimated." As this group emerged, a murmur spread around them. It seemed that the so-called Great Desert Dynasty had some notoriety. "Lin Dong, I don't need to capture you and exchange you for Nirvana pills with the demonic rock dynasty. Just hand over the ancient key, and I'll let you go. How about it?" The Nirvana Stage expert leading the Great Desert Dynasty group stared at Lin Dong, extending his hand. As he spoke, the dozen or so men behind him glared with fierce eyes, exuding strong waves of yuan power from their bodies, attempting to intimidate Lin Dong. Lin Dong cast a slightly strange glance at this group, then shook his head in exasperation. Not bothering to respond, he simply lifted his leg and walked toward the city. Seeing Lin Dong's dismissive action, the Nirvana expert of the Great Desert Dynasty narrowed his eyes. Staring at Lin Dong, who continued to approach, a sinister look suddenly flashed across his face. Mighty yuan power gathered on his fist, and he launched a fierce punch aimed directly at Lin Dong's head. However, in the face of such a ferocious attack, Lin Dong didn't even pause his steps. He casually raised his hand and swung it through the air. Instantly, a crisp slap echoed outside the city gate. The moment the slap rang out, a blood-red handprint appeared on the face of the Nirvana expert who had just thrown a punch. A tremendous force sent him flying backward, spitting out a mouthful of blood. The bustling city gate fell into sudden silence. Everyone watched the Nirvana expert who had been sent flying and landed in a heap on the ground, unsure whether he was dead or alive. For a moment, they all took a sharp breath. It was only now, as they slowly awoke from the lure of the massive bounty, that they remembered the man before them was the one who had escaped unscathed from the hands of Shi Xian of the demonic rock dynasty. "If you want the ancient key in my possession, trash like this should think twice before coming again. I won't always be this merciful." Lin Dong didn't even glance at the Nirvana expert he had slapped away. His gaze swept around as he spoke indifferently. Hearing his words, many people shuddered and dared not say anything further. Of course, the ancient domain hall had attracted many experts, some of whom were undoubtedly hidden talents. Therefore, some concealed glances were directed at Lin Dong, seemingly wanting to see what was so extraordinary about this person who had been causing such a stir recently. Lin Dong was evidently aware of these hidden, powerful gazes. His eyes narrowed slightly, and then Little Yin, who had been standing behind him without making a move, suddenly stepped forward. Instantly, a peculiar wave spread out from where he stepped. Shortly after, some muffled grunts seemed to come from the shadows. When the gazes were cast again, they were filled with shock as they looked at little Yin behind Lin Dong. Let's go. I've sensed the positions of the other 3 ancient keys. They've likely sensed mine as well. The demonic rock dynasty should be there too. Very well. I want to see what they can do to us, Lin Dong said, glancing around at some of the hidden figures before raising his gaze toward the depths of the ancient domain hall. There, he could sense the presence of the other 3 ancient keys. With that, Lin Dong began to move, stepping directly into the city and heading straight toward the source of the ancient key signals. This time, he was going to confront the demonic rock dynasty head-on,